Hey guys, Chef Jojo with ECO, and on this episode, we're going to talk about taking the bus test. What's going to happen if you don't show up to work? And as usual, we're going to discuss this topic over a shift drink. Wow, today's shift drink is Golden Road's Get Up Off That Brown. Yeah, I know. I've been on a little brown kick lately. They've been really good. The bus test. I got something for you. Why did Timmy drop his ice cream cone? Because he got hit by a bus. What happened to Frank when he got run over by a bus? He got tired. I know. Boomer jokes, dad jokes, whatever you want to call them. I said boomer. The reason why I said boomer, somebody called me out and said I'm tired of these boomer Snapchats or something on Instagram. I thought that was a little aggressive. Am I really a boomer? Anyway, I'm going to digress from that little bit of my feelings got hurt. I don't feel like a boomer.
You're not a boomer.
That's right. Gina said I'm not a boomer. So, you know what? That's right. Gen Xers. Like 3 generations. Anyway, what happens if you don't show up to work? There's a test called the bus test. If you're walking across the street and you get hit by a bus, does your establishment carry on or does it fold? Does it not work? Does it just crumble in front of you? Well, you don't care because you're dead. But it is actually something I talk to people about a lot. I often see chefs, managers, and all of us, we create an environment where we constantly need to be there. My last episode, I was talking about the weeds and how we never can seem to get out of it. And as we were discussing it, just like Gina said, I'm not a boomer. We were talking and she's like, you know, from the weeds, like there's got to be some way to get out of it. And what happens if you don't show up? Well, you got to make sure that your people can do the job when you're not there. And it got me to thinking back to the early days when I created an environment that I had to live there. And now I worked for as I grew, I finally got a job for a corporate, like a company. And when I was started, it was with Levy Restaurants. And Chef Phil Bucco always used to say, if you want to get promoted, you got to train your replacement. And you know what? That kind of has stuck with me for a long time. Like, if you want to move forward, you have to train your replacement. And it kind of embodies this whole bus test. Like, you can't move forward if no one will fill your place. And we all create an environment where we are so important that the whole operation will fall apart that no one wants to move us. That's dangerous in different stages. But my point for this is like, how do you step back and take a look at the operation and go, what would happen if I didn't come to work? What wouldn't get done? Who wouldn't know what to do? How would they communicate? Did I do a good enough job training my team? And I think that what you have to do for a true bus test is you kind of got to break it up into a couple of categories or a couple of stages. One is that you need to look at the overall business and you need to say, what is your position inside the business and how it would affect the business if you didn't come. And then you need to test it. There's a testing phase or a theoretical testing phase, like a hypothesis kind of thing, like the scientific method I want you to use, where if you didn't show up, what would happen? Who would need to do what to replace you? And, you know, that kind of thing can take a little while. You would have to cooperate and talk with your fellow managers. And each operation is different. But I think chefs, our F&B directors, however you want to look at it, each spot gets anchored down into the operation. Especially chefs, because I find that the first thing that gets cut is a back of house labor. They attack food cost and they attack labor cost back of house, because if you attack the front of house, when I say attack, that's aggressive. When you make cuts to do better financially, air quotes, to instead of running an 11%, now you got to run a 9. They say, well, the only place you can make it up is in back of house labor, because if you cut the front of house labor, it affects service and that affects the guest. So you need to figure out on the back of house side. So, hey chef, there's 24 hours in a day. So how are you going to fill those with your time? And when that happens, you get locked down on a spot, in a position, in a grill, or ordering the food and doing the banquets and not really helping make your team grow so they're better, faster, stronger, and they create less waste. None of that happens when you're working the station, but you're saving labor cost, but you're not really helping the business for the long term. And we say it, or people say it all the time, make the cuts, make the cuts. And sooner or later, you can't get blood from the stone, right? And we all run around and we say we don't have cooks and we don't have this. But what's funny, well, not funny, but what's interesting to me is that no one prepares for the bus test, not for themselves or for others. We just keep trudging along, working a station or doing it because they said so, air quotes again. And when the bus test happens, when it's out of a test situation, someone calls in sick, someone doesn't show up to work, someone quits, the operation doesn't fail. It doesn't stop. We move forward. And the whole time we could have been way more prepared for it if we actually would have prepared, but we don't. We ignore it. We just kind of trudge through. So we don't prepare. We don't prepare for it. You know what we do? We push through it. And that's just kind of like the nature of our business, right? You have to be kitchen tough or kitchen smart. If you can find a place that you enjoy working and you've got a decent team, you need to start asking yourself, how am I going to make this operation bus test proof? And when you do that, there's a couple of different phases of it. One, you got to take a look at where you are in that position, or like where you are in the organization, who's above you, who's below you, and then you need to expand from there. And I think there's a different bus test for the chef, and there's a different bus test for the line cook, that hourly team member. And there's a different bus test for the chef owner or the restaurant owner. Oftentimes I'll get messages and they're like, you don't understand. I have to be there because the operation won't work unless I'm there. Well, here's my caveat, or like my reply to that. If you set the operation up to do better or just as well when you weren't there and everybody could do it, does that mean that you have somebody that's ready to run another operation, or you could start to work on another restaurant? So instead of having one restaurant, you could have two. And so instead of like being a slave to this one anchor that only produces this amount of income, you could build another opportunity for yours and your team. So instead of one, now you're two, and then maybe three, because you keep applying this same type of logic, and then you're not a restaurant, you're a restaurant group, and then you have more buying power, and then you have more employees, and then you have more opportunities for them, and you have a better way to pay them because you can now apply for insurance, because instead of 6 employees that you work, the dog hell out of, you have 26 employees, and then, your revenue is over, coming in, your purchase power is stronger, and it's easier to give them insurance or give them a way that supports them. And now you can start training them because your focus was not being strapped to the restaurant. I'm not trying to be idealistic inside our environment or saying that this is like the way you have to do it. But what I'm saying is a lot of times we don't look at it that way. We look at trying to save a nickel while we step over dollars. We're like, you got to put the chef on the station because I don't want to pay somebody $12 an hour. I'm going to save X amount of dollars. And when I was discussing some different topics with people and the culinary students, and they're like, well, I went to my people and they asked me to work front of house and back of house at this certain job. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, but they don't want to pay me any more to do it. So now I work 5 different positions and they don't treat me like I'm valuable. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much a shame. That's like, what would happen if you didn't show up? Does that mean they don't have a server, they don't have a cook, they don't have a busser, or a cashier all at once? And they're worried about saving $50 a day? over a week's period. So for $100, like let's say you work 5 days a week. Well, I'll give you 7. Okay. So for $115, you can't figure out how to run your business a little bit more efficient. It takes take care of somebody that actually is showing up and working their butt off for you. I know it's not 100% the bus test, but it's the same damn thought process. Why are we not building an environment where we can grow and take care of each other? You know, God forbid something happens to one of us and then the entire team falls apart because you weren't there to hold them together. You're talking about the long game, right? Stop planning for today, start planning for next year, and focus on that and build your team up to get there. I think what I would like to do is maybe take another episode or two and really talk about that chef test for the bus and that cook test, because they're completely different. One is based on becoming so important, working 4 or 5 positions, and the other is making other people feel like they could do your job so you could move forward. 2 different mindsets, same philosophy. Anyway, I hope that this sparks something for you or your team, and you guys can comment below. Let me know what you think of this. Maybe there's something I'm not looking at that you could, let me know to look from a different angle. That's always awesome when you guys comment and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. I really appreciate those. So hit the bell below so you get notified when we upload these on YouTube. You can always follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. I'm still not doing Twitter too much. As usual, I'm Chef JoJo. Until next time, cheers.